Story 1. Betty White, a huge animal advocate and lover, also stood up for a black dancer she had on her show back in the 1950s. The network threatened to fire her and cancel her show because she wanted to showcase this man's talents. She responded, "I'm sorry, but he stays." Live with it. Following her decision, she gave him more airtime, and her show was eventually canceled. Not long after, the Civil Rights Act was passed. Story 2. Bob Ross's signature calm demeanor was a direct result of his service in the Air Force. He was first sergeant of the clinic at a base in Alaska, a role that frequently made him act tough and mean. In his own words, "The guy who makes you scrub the latrine, the guy who makes you make your bed, the guy who screams at you for being late to work." After getting out of the service, he decided that he never wanted to raise his voice again. Story 3. Hedy Lamarr, one of the most beautiful women ever, was also a verifiable genius. She invented spread-spectrum technology, known then as frequency hopping, which made possible a wide range of wireless communications technologies, including Wi-Fi, GPS, and Bluetooth. Additionally, they named a character in Blazing Saddles after her. Story 4. I'm seeing a lot of good ones already, but I'll toss in a surprising one: Master Sergeant Robert Norman Ross. He eventually retired from military life after a 20-year career and went on to star in the public television show The Joy of Painting with Bob Ross. Story 5. Audie Murphy, the most decorated soldier of World War II, and possibly the most decorated American soldier ever. After the war, he had a successful acting career. Throughout his career, he refused to star in anything related to alcohol or cigarettes because he knew little kids were looking up to him. He also was very open about suffering from what we now know as post-traumatic stress disorder and advocated for better treatment for other veterans suffering from it. Story 6. Sir Christopher Lee was an absolute gentleman who hunted down and killed Nazi war criminals. For the final few months of his service, Lee, who spoke fluent French, Italian, and German, among other languages, was seconded to the Central Registry of War Criminals and Security Suspects. Here, he was tasked with helping to track down Nazi war criminals. Story 7. Michelle Yeoh is well known in Malaysia for her multiple volunteer works and advocacy programs that champion human rights, especially for flood disaster reliefs in 2017 and also 2021. During these times, she helped clean out debris with minimal publicity. She also performed similar volunteer efforts during the 2015 Nepal earthquake disaster, where she was part of the relief team for rescue efforts. Additionally, she is part of the Olympic Committee members and a United Nations ambassador. She is one of the unique individuals who has contributed significantly to the Asian community, not just in films and media, but also in real life. Story 8. Jimmy Stewart, the seemingly "ah shucks" actor, was a badass with a distinguished military career. He enlisted in the Air Force for World War II and served in the reserves throughout his acting career. Guys like John Wayne pretended to be tough guys, but he was a draft dodger in World War II. Jimmy didn't have to pretend. Like they say, empty barrels make the loudest noise. Story 9. She is dead, but Julia Child was an actual spy during World War II, and she was a contributor to the first somewhat effective shark repellent formula. She later joked that it was her first recipe. Story 10. Mariska Hargitay. For her work with sexual assault survivors, she has a foundation called the Joyful Heart Foundation, and she has been a tireless champion for clearing the backlogs of rape kit testing. Story 11. Dr. Sir Brian Harold May, legendary rock star, Queen guitarist, songwriter, and sometime vocalist, has a legitimate PhD in astrophysics, estimated intelligence quotient of 180, collaborates with the National Aeronautics and Space Administration and the European Space Agency, renowned expert at stereoscopic 3D photography and historian of its origins. He has published multiple books on the subject, including Queen in 3D, comprised of stereoscopic photos taken by himself and others on their many tours. He is also deeply involved in animal rescue and conservation causes, especially when it comes to European badgers, hedgehogs, and foxes. Founder of the Save Me Trust to benefit wildlife rescue work. Owner of the London Stereoscopic Company and of Brian May Guitars. Like seriously, Sir Brian, leave some brains and talent for the rest of us. Edit typo. If there are more typos, sorry. Story 12. Sorel Book, known for many roles including the iconic boss hog from The Dukes of Hazzard, served in the United States Army during the Korean War for 2 years as a counterintelligence officer. Book was fluent in French, Japanese, Spanish, Russian, and Italian. He mentioned that he also dabbled in a variety of other languages including Arabic, Mandarin Chinese, Dutch, Persian, Polish, and Swedish. In his spare time, he was a guest conductor at the Buffalo Philharmonic Orchestra. He was quite an interesting and accomplished individual, even beyond his extensive and diverse acting career. Story 13. Keanu Reeves. Not only is he an amazing actor, but he also does his own stunts and has a heart of gold. Plus, have you seen him ride a motorcycle? Badass. Story 14. I was an extra on a movie set once as a child with Danny DeVito. Super nice guy, very friendly, and generous with his time as droves of kids and families wanted to say hi. The whole experience was good. I made enough money for that Xbox I so desperately wanted, got free food during breaks, and met Danny DeVito. Story 15. Julia Child spent years in the Office of Strategic Services, the precursor to the Central Intelligence Agency, and even worked directly for the director. She developed a shark repellent to keep them from detonating ordnance designed to destroy German U-boats. Her recipe is still used by the US military to this day. After the war, she was assigned to maintain classified communication records in Sri Lanka and later in China. She was awarded the Meritorious Civilian Service Award, which is the highest military award a non-military person can receive in the US. Story 16. President Jimmy Carter. Here is a man who could have just cleaned up on speaking gigs, but instead spent his time working within Habitat for Humanity to build housing all over the world. He never made his work into a news clip to further any personal agenda other than to help get people involved. Jimmy Carter is an example of what an American president can be. A very kind, considerate, and involved gentleman. Story 17. Shirley Temple, the lovely child actress, evolved into a fantastic United States diplomat as an adult. According to her Wikipedia page, which I'm referring to since my attempt to summarize her achievements while typing on my phone in a public bathroom wouldn't do her justice, she began her diplomatic career in 1969, when she was appointed to represent the United States at a session of the United Nations General Assembly. There, she worked at the United States mission under Ambassador Charles Yost. Later, she was named the United States Ambassador to Ghana and also served as the first female United States Chief of Protocol. In 1988, she published her autobiography, Child Star. After her biography was published, she served as the United States Ambassador to Czechoslovakia from 1989 to 1992. She is also the namesake of an absolutely amazing soda mix. Story 18. Christopher Lee, a famous actor, visited many places as a Royal Air Force intelligence officer. He was a heavy metal singer in a band, married a Swedish countess, and was knighted. An absolute cool badass. Story 19. Jon Stewart. Love him or hate him, he has done a lot of good work for 9/11 first responders and veterans. While he has his political views, if you are on his side and you are an unpleasant person, he will let you know. Story 20. Adam Driver, Marine actor, general nice guy. Ben Affleck tells a story about how he forgot about his own son's birthday, but Ben and Adam were in a movie together at the time, remembered and sent him all the Star Wars toys. He was Kylo Ren/Ben Solo in the movies. Ben said Adam saved his sorry ass, and he'll never forget his kindness. Story 21. Audrey Hepburn hid messages in her shoes for the Dutch resistance during World War II. The messages contained information which was helpful in smuggling Jewish children to safety. She was 14 years old. Story 22. That woman can politely and tactfully go tell Mother Teresa where to get off. Living legend. She does so much good, but still can bite when she needs to and make you walk away enjoying it. Story 23. When Charles Schulz introduced a black character into his comic strip, the Southern newspapers were alarmed, and he received threats to remove the character or else face unspecified consequences. Well, Larry, let's put it this way. Either you print it exactly as I draw it or I quit. How's that? Story 24. Rick Moranis quit acting in 1991 to fully support his kids when their mother, his wife, died. He was also attacked in 2020, but he handled the situation bravely. Story 25. Geena Davis was not only a female action star well before it became common, but she also performed a significant amount of her own stunts. Additionally, she came fairly close to joining the United States Olympic archery team. Story 26. Dee Snider, who spoke before Congress to explain that heavy metal isn't satanic and should be treated as a legitimate form of music. That presentation did a lot to combat the satanic panic that was going on at the time. Fred Rogers convinced Congress to continue funding public television for the purpose of educating children. Keanu Reeves remains humble in the face of stardom and actually learned gun techniques for a film but continues to train long after the film was done shooting. Prince spent a lot of time and money helping children learn and practice music, going so far as to fund an entire school that was struggling. MC Hammer retired from the limelight and spends his time as a pastor in a small-town church. He is very active in his community and always takes time to listen to kids, often gives advice to upcoming artists on the ins and outs of the music industry, often going so far as to spend time listening to their demo tapes. Andre the Giant. He was the nicest, gentlest man you'll ever meet. He would often take time to just chill with fans. He was a very humble man. I had the opportunity to have lunch with him. He treated me and a few other employees at a Blockbuster he frequented. The dude was so nice. Story 27. I'm tired of boring Reddit bait answers like Dolly Parton and Keanu Reeves. Come on, name someone who was actually badass like B. Arthur, who literally served in the United States Marine Corps. Story 28. The Spice Girls were mistreated and overworked during their training years. They got fed up, decided to leave, and quite literally staged a heist to steal the master recordings of their hit debut, Wannabe. Story 29. Not that I know much about him, but I am surprised nobody has mentioned Tom Hardy yet. From what I understand, he is a very nice man in general, a huge advocate for dogs, and will absolutely destroy you if you mess with him or dogs. Did not he also chase down a mugger once? Story 30. Dolly Parton. She's a sweetheart, but she takes no nonsense. Elvis wanted to record I Will Always Love You, but wanted 50% of the songwriting credits. She said no. Even if Whitney Houston hadn't made a huge hit out of it, it would still have been the right business decision. Story 31. Debbie Harry has the voice and looks of an angel, but is the epitome of the word badass. She started at the bottom of the New York punk scene with Blondie and didn't care one bit about criticism from others. She owned the scene. Unfortunately, she was raped at knife point but picked herself up and kept going. She looked after her partner, Chris Stein, when he was suffering from an autoimmune disease and had to put her career on hold for years. She became friends with and worked alongside great artists like H.R. Geiger and Andy Warhol to create some incredible artwork. Debbie Harry is an incredible songwriter, musician, and has inspired countless artists, both male and female, for many years. There's no one else like her, and there never will be again. Story 32. Jonathan Stewart. Love him or hate him, he has done a lot of wonderful work for September 11th first responders and veterans. While he has his political beliefs, if you are on his side and you're an individual behaving poorly, he will tell you so. Story 33. Kind of an old one, but Abraham Lincoln was an astonishing figure. In his youth, Lincoln reportedly lifted a grown man off the ground by his neck using only one hand and then threw him, also using only one hand. He also reportedly lifted a full barrel of whiskey over his head to drink directly from the barrel. A full barrel of whiskey weighs about 500 pounds. The man was incredibly strong. Story 34. James Doohan, also known as Scotty from the original Star Trek. He first saw combat with the Canadian 3rd Infantry Division, landing in the second wave on Juno Beach on D-Day. He personally shot 2 enemy snipers before being hit by 6 rounds from friendly fire. 4 in his leg, 1 in the chest, and 1 through his right middle finger. The bullet to his chest was stopped by a silver cigarette case given to him by his brother. His right middle finger had to be amputated, something he would conceal on screen during most of his career as an actor, sometimes with a flesh-colored glove with a faux finger. Doohan then graduated from Air Observation Pilot Course 40 with 11 other Canadian artillery officers as a pilot artillery spotter. Although he was never actually a member of the Royal Canadian Air Force, Doohan was once labeled the craziest pilot in the Canadian Air Force. In the late spring of 1945, he slalomed a plane between telegraph poles to prove it could be done, earning himself a serious reprimand. Rest in peace, you badass. Story 35. Slightly lesser-known guy, Diamond Dallas Page. Retired professional wrestler and advocate for veterans and men's health in general. Created yoga and strength programs targeting regular dudes to get people into shape. Helps his fellow wrestlers who face a host of problems when they're out of the ring. His looks might say douchey meathead, but his actions say everything but. Story 36. Danny DeVito is well known to be an absolute class act. There are a bunch of stories out there about how cool he is in real life. Apparently, playing Frank Reynolds in It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia is his favorite role in his life because it's a total 180-degree reversal from how he actually is. He thinks it's a blast to be such a problematic person on screen. He says it's almost a relieving therapeutic sort of thing. Story 37. David Niven returned to England when the Second World War broke out to rejoin the army. He served initially with the Rifle Brigade in France and later with the Phantom Special Reconnaissance General Headquarters Liaison Regiment. Story 38. I wouldn't categorize him as wholesome, as most of his characters lean toward creepy. However, it touches my heart every time I read that former New York City firefighter Steve Buscemi donned his gear and went back into service following September 11th.